Okay, let's dive right into this explainer because what we're about to uncover is honestly, it's one of the most successful and frankly deadly marketing campaigns in human history. We're going to look at how a simple, naturally growing green leaf was meticulously transformed into a massive dystopian machine. And a big part of this story, which we're going to focus heavily on today, is how a guy named Edward Bernays literally engineered human behavior to generate billions. What's really wild about this whole history is that so many of our desires, the things we think look cool or make us feel independent, well, they were completely engineered by men in sharp suits over a century ago. They didn't just sell a plant, right? They sold this brilliant illusion of freedom, while at the exact same time building a psychological trap that still holds a huge chunk of the global population hostage today.
So, part one, sacred leaves to mass profit. Let's get into it.
To really understand this machine, we have to go way back. Thousands of years ago, the Maya tribe actually used the tobacco leaf for sacred, peaceful worship. Totally innocent, right? Then, jump to 1492, Columbus stumbles upon the Americas, and eventually, word of this plant makes its way to Europe. Enter a French researcher named Jean-Nicot in the mid-1500s. He sees locals smoking it, somehow believes it's this miracle cure for diseases, and brings the seeds back to French royalty, basically convincing the European elite that smoking is a powerful medical treatment. Yup, the highly addictive chemical we know today as nicotine is literally named after Jean-Nicot, the very first guy who, unknowingly sold the world a massive medical lie about it. And because of him, it became this huge trend for the rich in Europe. But here's the thing. To make real money, it couldn't just be a luxury for the elite. It had to be for everyone, which brings us to 1880 and the bond sack machine. Before this, rolling a smoke by hand took time, maybe 15 minutes. This machine, it could roll 120,000 cigarettes in just 10 hours. 120,000. It was an absolute game changer. It took the leaf from a handcrafted luxury straight into a cheap, mass-produced trap for the masses. Moving on to part two, war, soldiers, and cigarettes. Okay, so by 1900, people realized this stuff wasn't exactly great for kids, and teen smoking was actually banned. The corporate machine was panicking. They desperately needed new buyers. And their solution? World War I. They literally distributed free cigarettes to soldiers in the trenches, framing it as a way to find a little comfort in the absolute horrors of war. But the psychological impact back home was huge. Every time a stressed American soldier lit up, smoking became tied to this image of the brave, patriotic hero defending his country. All right, part three. Edward Bernays, selling an illusion. This is where the marketing gets truly genius and, honestly, super dark. Because even with the men hooked after the war, half the population still wasn't smoking. It was frowned upon. It was seen as too masculine. Enter Edward Bernays, the ultimate manipulator of the 20th century. He was hired to break this taboo and basically double profits overnight. And his solution was the Torches of Freedom campaign. While women were fighting for equality, Bernays literally paid a group of women to march in a public parade, boldly smoking cigarettes, and he made sure the press was right there to snap photos. He basically hijacked the entire women's liberation movement, turning a toxic product into a symbol of female independence and freedom. But here is the absolute wildest part, the hypocrisy of Edward Bernays. Right after launching this massive campaign telling women to smoke for freedom, he went home, found his own wife getting ready to smoke, and physically ripped the pack out of her hands. He forbade her from touching them, explicitly calling them dangerous. He knew exactly how toxic it was. He was aggressively pushing this poison onto millions of women for profit while completely shielding his own family from it. Which leads us to part four, propaganda, Nazis, and Hollywood. By the mid-20th century, the science finally started catching up. German doctors were actually the first to scientifically prove a direct link between smoking and lung cancer. And because of this, the Nazi government, and partially reporting the history from the source here, launched a massive anti-smoking campaign. They put up posters, restricted smoking areas, and heavily taxed imports. So how did the U.S. tobacco companies react to this cancer news? They used a logical fallacy called reductio ad Hitlerum. They completely flipped the script. They pushed the narrative that because Hitler hated smoking, choosing to smoke was actually an act of American patriotism. They essentially implied that if you were anti-smoking, you were siding with Nazi ideologies. It was a completely brilliant, entirely manipulative way to deflect from the fact that their product caused cancer. And they didn't stop at political propaganda. They bought pop culture.
Fast forward to the 1990s, and a staggering 66% of Hollywood actors were secretly contracted by Big Tobacco to smoke on screen. They didn't need explicit commercials. They just needed the cool action hero to light up in slow motion during a movie. That perceived coolness? Yeah, totally fake. It was a highly orchestrated, paid illusion to keep the trap looking appealing.
Part 5. The Poison in Disguise. Now, the trap isn't just standard cigarettes, right? It evolves regionally into much darker concoctions. Take shisha, for example. It's heavily marketed as this fun, social thing, completely masking the massive intake of smoke. Or look at neshuk, popular in some regions. That's chewing tobacco literally mixed with coal ash. Yes, ash from a fire that gets swallowed directly into the stomach. But the absolute most horrifying variant is something called Nora. You might think, oh, Nora, that sounds pretty harmless. Actually, no. It's a mix of tobacco, ash, and literally crushed glass from household light bulbs. I mean, think about that. Why glass? Because it's deliberately designed to slice open the user's lips and gums, forcing the toxins directly and rapidly into the bloodstream for a quicker hit. It is basically a guaranteed fast track to oral cancer, and it just shows how incredibly far this engineered addiction will push people. Finally, Part 6, Breaking the Dystopian Trap. So, why does all of this, Jean Nicot's lies, Edward Bernays' ruthless marketing playbook, the Hollywood payoffs, the crushed glass, why does this matter to us today? Because this corporate machine is still running, and its primary target demographic is vulnerable 15 and 16-year-olds. These kids tell themselves, oh, I'm just trying it, or I can quit anytime. They think it makes them look mature. But the reality? They're stepping into a trap perfected over centuries. They end up trapped by an addiction that was literally engineered for them before they were even born. It's not a symbol of rebellion, it's not maturity, it is an $800 billion trap designed to drain your health and your wallet. So, to wrap up this explainer, the final question you really have to ask yourself, or the teenagers in your life, is this. Are you seriously going to let a fragile little piece of paper, a trap engineered by dead men in suits over a century ago, be stronger than you?